Every war leaves behind its ghosts. Some are the innocent ones, the people who never lifted a weapon yet paid the ultimate price. Others, well, others walked right into the darkness and then seemed surprised when it swallowed them whole. And here's the thing. Sometimes you stumble on a story so strange, so twisted, that you almost don't know where to start. Imagine a woman once praised as one of France's greatest athletes, a woman who fought in World War I, who boxed men into the floor, who raced cars and motorbikes, who swam, lifted weights, wrestled, shot, rode, and, as if life weren't interesting enough, rewrote the rules of how a woman should act in early 20th century Europe. A national icon, really. Someone the public couldn't stop talking about. Now imagine that the same woman became one of the most feared collaborators of Nazi-occupied France. Someone whose name in whispered circles became Hyena of the Gestapo. Someone accused, and very often believed, of torturing captured women, of feeding the Gestapo with information, of helping the German war machine rip France open from the inside. And then, in April 1944, imagine her car crawling to a halt on a quiet country road in Normandy, and a French resistance unit stepping out from the hedgerows with their weapons ready. Well, that's the life of Violette Morris. A story too unusual to ignore, too dark to forget. Let's walk through it, carefully, step by step, because her fall from a celebrated athlete to a riddled corpse in an unclaimed morgue drawer is one of the strangest moral collisions of the Second World War. Violette Morris was born in April 1893, the daughter of a retired cavalry captain. That background shaped her more than people realized: discipline, pride, a stubborn streak that bordered on defiance. Her teenage years were spent mostly in a convent, though by all accounts, she wasn't the sort to thrive under strict rules. Still, she followed the expected path for a while. In August 1914, she married Edouard Joseph Garraud. 9 years later, they divorced. The marriage, as friends recalled, felt like a mismatch from the start. Violette was simply too much for that world. When the First World War broke out, something clicked inside her. She learned to drive and began working as an ambulance driver. Not far from the front, at the front. She drove through the chaos of the Somme and later through Verdun, carrying wounded men, ferrying supplies, delivering messages the military didn't trust to slower channels. People who met her in those years described her as almost unervingly fearless. She would drive through artillery fire like it was a summer storm. And she didn't stop there. She became a courier, slipping near frontline positions, bringing orders where others refused to go. This part of her life is often overshadowed by the monstrous reputation she later earned, but back then she was admired, genuinely admired, as someone doing her part for France. After the war, Morris dove into sports with the same intensity she threw into everything else. Football, water polo, boxing, wrestling, diving, archery, weightlifting, she did all of it, and did it frighteningly well. She played for the French women's national football team. She competed in the women's Olympiads and won gold. She boxed men full force and beat them. She raced motorbikes and cars, including in the Tour de France automobile, and even underwent surgery to better fit into racing car cockpits. That's how determined or obsessed, depending whom you asked, she was. And people loved it at first. She was an icon of women's sport in the 1920s, a symbol of possibility. But fame and friction grew hand in hand. She swore constantly, dressed in men's clothing, smoked like a chimney, cursed referees, and in one match punched one. Literally punched the official. That didn't help her reputation, to say the least. At some point, sport federations had had enough. They revoked her license. And because the universe loves irony, she was banned from participating in the 1928 Olympics. She tried to fight the decision in court. Her statement at the trial was furious and strangely prophetic. We live in a country made rotten by money and scandals, ruled by speechifiers, schemers, and cowards. Someday its decay will bring it to the level of a slave, but if I'm still here, I won't be one of the slaves. Those words would take on a very different meaning a decade later. By January 1933, Morris settled into a houseboat on the River Seine with her partner, actress Yvonne de Bray. They lived on inheritance money, sang on occasion for small crowds, even appeared on radio programs. For a while, things seemed almost peaceful. Then came Christmas Eve 1937, a turning point. While dining with neighbors in Neuilly, Morris encountered an aggressive drunk named Joseph Lucam. The next day, Lucam showed up at her houseboat. A fight broke out. He pulled a knife. She pulled a revolver. She fired twice. He died in the hospital. She was arrested, jailed, and then acquitted. Self-defense, the court ruled. But the stain remained. Newspapers whispered. Audiences muttered. Her legend shifted. She wasn't just a rough athlete anymore. She was dangerous. This moment didn't turn her into a Nazi collaborator, but hardened her life, her public image, her options. And maybe, just maybe, it helped send her down a road she wouldn't escape. 2 years before the shooting, in December 1935, Morris had met Gertrude Hanecker, a former racer turned journalist and recruiter for the Nazi SD. To say this relationship influenced her path would be putting it mildly. Hanecker invited her to the 1936 Olympics in Berlin as an honored guest of Adolf Hitler. That's not a casual invitation. That's a regime sizing someone up. And Violette went. She knew people across French military circles. She had contacts in sports, engineering, automotive networks. She understood vehicles, engines, logistics. She moved easily between social layers: soldiers, aristocrats, mechanics, artists, bureaucrats. And she had a rebellious streak that the Germans probably recognized as exploitable. Soon enough, she began providing information. Not just gossip, military data, plans for the Maginot Line, maps of Paris, schematics for the Somua S-35 tank. All of this flowed from France into the hands of the German war machine. And the Germans made good use of it during the invasion of France. Was she paid? Manipulated? Ideologically convinced? Desperate? Historians still argue. But the fact remains, she gave them material that helped destroy her own country's defenses. When World War II broke out, Morris deepened her collaboration. She joined the Carling, essentially the French arm of the Gestapo, a brutal organization supported by the Vichy government. They extorted, tortured, arrested, and hunted down resistance fighters. And she worked with them. By then, Violette lived comfortably on her barge and seemed entirely committed to her new role. Some historians will argue that she was later turned into a scapegoat, blamed for far more than she actually did. Others say she sank willingly into the job, craving importance, protection, or maybe a sense of belonging she never really had. Whatever the truth, her reputation in Paris became unmistakable. She was known, feared, as the Hyena of the Gestapo. Several sources claim that she helped track down SOE agents, the British Special Operations Executive, particularly those working with the French resistance. Reports say she beat and whipped prisoners, many of them women, that she used brute force during interrogations, that she assisted in operations that fed people into the Gestapo's torture chambers. Were all these accusations accurate? Hard to say. Wartime memories can be blurry, exaggerated, vengeful, but enough testimonies aligned to cement her infamy. And in war, reputation can be as fatal as fact. By 1944, the French resistance was no longer a loose collection of angry patriots. It was a growing, coordinated underground force. As the Allies prepared for D-Day, resistance networks across France expanded operations, hunted collaborators, disrupted German logistics. Morris, with her connections, actions, and name, rose high on their list. Some saw her as a direct threat to resistance networks. Others believed she had personally betrayed several groups. Records suggest she reported a parachuting network months before her death, leading to 6 executions, including the wife of one resistor. Another tip led to the discovery of an arms cache. 7 resistance fighters killed, 10 captured and tortured in Paris prisons. Even if she wasn't responsible for every accusation, she was responsible for enough. So the resistance decided she had to go. On April 26, 1944, Violette Morris drove her Citroën traction Avant from Luray toward Epines in Normandy. The Balliol family rode with her, adults and children who, according to various accounts, had also benefited from the occupation. She didn't know the resistance had tampered with her car. Didn't know that armed fighters were hiding along the roadside. Didn't know this drive would be her last. Her car sputtered, slowed, stopped. Figures emerged from the bushes. And then a sudden burst of gunfire. Machine guns, rifles, bullets smashing the windows, tearing through seats, ripping into the bodies inside. No warning, no time to react. It was over in seconds. Inside the car, 3 adults and 2 children lay dead. Yes, children. The war had no mercy left for anyone. Her violent end. Morris's body was riddled with bullets, a grim, shredded echo of the powerful athlete she once was. The corpses were transported to a local morgue. No family claimed her remains. Eventually, she was buried in an unmarked grave. A quiet, anonymous end for someone who once stood on athletic podiums and raced roaring machines across Europe. The debate continues. Some historians insist that she was vilified beyond reason, that the resistance inflated her crimes after her death to justify the killing of children during the ambush. Others argue the opposite, that her collaboration was far more destructive than the public ever learned. The truth is likely somewhere in the middle, but it's impossible to untangle entirely. Occupation years were full of shadows, secrets, and grudges. Documentation was messy. Testimonies were emotional. But the pattern is clear. She gave the Nazis information. She worked with the Gestapo-aligned Carling. She benefited from the occupation. She played a role in arrests that led to torture and executions. One detail remains strangely fascinating: Hitler's personal invitation. What made him notice her? Was it her notoriety? Her athletic fame? Her contacts? Her personality? Maybe he sensed that she could be useful. Maybe she projected strength the regime admired. Maybe it was simply luck and timing. But that moment, that trip to the 1936 Olympics, was the hinge on which her entire life swung. Violette Morris was a woman of contradictions. A war heroine turned collaborator. A world-class athlete turned feared interrogator. A woman who broke every rule of her era, but somehow ended up serving a regime that represented everything she once seemed to resist. Her life could have taken so many different turns, but it took this one. And here's the unsettling question. If someone like her, fearless, talented, admired, could be drawn into the orbit of a monster like Hitler, how many others might have followed the same path under just slightly different circumstances? History doesn't always give comfortable answers.